Nice.
Hello, testing, testing. Okay. Hello. Testing, 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 testing. That's good? Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Welcome to Veronica's senior presentation. I do not want to embarrass Veronica, but I knew Veronica since she was born. And I saw Veronica when she was young in school because she went to school with my son, my kids. And so I got to see her be at school when she was in first and second and third grade. And I got to observe her as a reader and as a learner. And then I got to see her come to Valley New School and work with her as her advisor. And then a couple weeks ago, I got to see her teach a class at Montessori in the same classroom that she grew up in. And it was a tearjerker because it was full circle in so many ways. Like Veronica's truly going to carry on innovative education into the world. I'm sure of it. And it's all because of herself as a learner growing into the teacher she is becoming, and part of it through this senior project on the philosophy and practice of the Montessori method, which is an aspect of education. So Veronica is an example of excellence as a student. Those of you who are young and in the audience, as you pursue your own graduation, take note of the processes Veronica uses because it's truly an example of excellence. Take it away, Veronica.
Thank you. Visualize a system where all people have to execute the exact same assignment in the same duration at the same frequency, gaining the exact same knowledge. To most of us, this equates with confinement and conformity. As humans, we prefer to evaluate, design, and achieve independently. This raises the question, why do most schools implement this exact system? Perhaps this is why so many students say they dislike school. Our traditional school system was built to operate similar to a factory's approach, where, as one researcher put it, children are to be shaped and fashioned into products to meet various demands of life. Maria Montessori, an Italian physician, educator, and anthropologist, founder of the Montessori method of education, thought schools should be different. After years of research, she concluded that students learn better through handling their own time according to their individual inclination and under individual guidance. Choice is the most important factor in teaching a learner. Without it, pupils will lack the necessary interest, engagement, enjoyment, and eagerness to understand new concepts and make progress. While traditional American schools focus on memorizing knowledge, completing tasks, and conforming to standards, the goal of Montessori education is to grow the whole child by nurturing the child's natural way of learning. In other words, It cultivates compassionate, critical thinking, lifelong learners. Having attended Appleton Public Montessori, APM for elementary school, I have great appreciation for the method, although I didn't realize how truly beneficial it was for all learners until I researched Montessori education as the topic of my senior capstone project. I knew Montessori education would be interesting to investigate deeper. I also knew I wanted this topic and project to assist me in my future. Spending this year learning about Maria Montessori's philosophy, pedagogy, and the science behind the method, and most of all, how to be a Montessori educator, it has solidified my goal to become an elementary teacher certified in Montessori education. To understand the Montessori method, it is important to understand its origin and philosophy. Maria Montessori was one of the first female medical doctors of the 19th century. After graduating from the University of Rome in 1897, she volunteered in mental asylums, observing that the confined children were in need of more stimulating environments. From 1900 to 1902, Montessori worked as the co-director of the Orthophrenic School, training special education teachers and teaching students who had come from asylums or failed out of state schools. This inspired her to observe traditional classrooms, research educational pedagogy, and begin to develop her methods and materials. Opening her first classroom in 1907, the Children's House, or Casa dei Bambini in Italian, Montessori worked to refine her practice by experimenting with the environment, lessons, and materials used in her classroom to help underprivileged children who many thought were unable to learn. In 1909, Montessori documented her teaching theories in her book, The Montessori Method. After resigning from the University of Rome, where she gave lectures on reform in our schools, she focused on advancing her flourishing educational movement. Today, the American Montessori Society defines Montessori education as a child-centered approach to learning that emphasizes self-directed activity and hands-on experiences in a prepared environment. Natural activities of childhood and children's interests guide the learning. The method strives to coach students developing skills such as problem solving, helping others or teaching others, and independence, while viewing children as capable and eager learners. In contrast with traditional methods of learning, the Montessori method does not incorporate grades or tests, excluding state-required participation if public. Instead, it utilizes mixed-age classrooms, student autonomy of learning topics, longer work time blocks, and specially trained teachers. Given that the goal of education is to teach children how to be educated adults, Montessori educators believe it is crucial that we keep the children's best interest in mind, asking ourselves what is necessary for their highest success. When designing my project plan, I knew it might be hard to fully understand the intricacies of the method, materials, and pedagogy, so I applied Montessori philosophies, incorporating as much hands-on and experiential learning as I could. I started my research with Maria Montessori's book, The Montessori Method, in addition to another book containing more scientific research studies supporting the method, and a plethora of online sources. I also planned 2 research trips: the Future Teachers Conference at the University of Northern Colorado that took place in early February, and the Montessori Event National Conference held in Washington, D.C. in March. The Future Teachers Conference taught me more about the importance of teaching and the impact a good teacher can make. The Montessori event taught me much more about specific implementations and strategies, administrative duties, and a variety of leadership, classroom management, and teacher development approaches. This conference also helped me to gain better insight into what the Montessori teacher's role in a classroom is, through listening to keynote speakers and getting to converse with a wide variety of Montessorians. In addition to the conferences, I scheduled multiple live source meetings and classroom visits to both local Montessori and traditional classrooms throughout my research phase. Collaborating with real teachers in the practice helped me to better understand their similarities and differences. One of the most valuable live sources was my former teacher at Appleton Public Montessori, Jody Fowler. During an observation and meeting, she explained the Montessori philosophy in a way that I hadn't heard before, which helped me to better understand the thought process behind a Montessori classroom and how transformative it truly can be. Montessori pedagogy is designed to equally support the child, environment, and teacher. Equalizing those three main components creates the best educational learning space for the child, creating a classroom that is stable, interdependent, and grows self-discipline and a love of learning. The triangle is considered strong because if one element is removed, the educational process falls apart. The teacher prepares the space, the child acts on that space, and the interaction produces learning. While it is important to keep all parts of the triangle equal, the child is also considered at the center of the practice. The goal of school, of course, is to teach the child and hopefully give them opportunities to become self-motivated, passionate, curious, and capable. While traditional schools also have all three parts of the triangle, they do not equally nurture all aspects. If traditional students do not enjoy what they are learning or are not understanding either at the rate they should be or through the method of delivery, it can set many pupils up for failure. The Institution of Educational Sciences reported at least 32% of students were behind in their grade level in at least one subject at the end of the 23-24 school year. If students were able to pick what they wanted to work on, and when they worked on it, we might see a boost in student enjoyment, engagement, and achievement. For instance, in Montessori practice, very little homework is assigned. Most schools even avoid implementing it altogether, because Montessori students achieve enough work during their daily work times. The Montessori triangle places students in an environment where they want to pick and learn the material that society believes is important, automatically setting them up for success. In traditional settings, children are seen as vessels that need to retain the required amount of information in order to pass and graduate. With Montessori's approach, the focus isn't necessarily on what the child is learning, but that the child is learning, becoming an effective adult in society. Since Montessori conducted her own research, many studies on motivation have shown that people of all ages have higher outcomes and creativity when they have choice, or when the illusion is given. We learn and remember better, solve tasks faster, and even opt to engage in more tasks for longer when we have control. One of the most famous studies, Richard Deschamps' study on natural school settings and motivation, demonstrated that the greater the degree of personal choice, the more children convey competence, expressing greater sense of self-worth and autonomy-oriented intrinsic motivation. During this project, I felt I got to most understand the child through volunteering during APM's monthly field trips to the Appleton Public Library. I was able to observe children and teachers while I helped students manage behavior and find books. I appreciated the opportunity to work with students and implement as many Montessori practices as I knew how. Specifically, when working with the Children's House class, I was able to see more behavior-based guidance from the teachers and what it entails. Another interesting aspect about those field trips was being able to see the difference between children working in their prepared environment classroom versus learning outside with other leaders instructing. For example, I noticed that without their prepared environment and detailed training on how to act in it, some children's housers had a harder time upholding the culture of their regular classroom in the new environment, a big open room adjacent to the children's area. Maria Montessori used the fact that children imitate their surroundings to guide her methodology of the prepared environment. In a Montessori classroom, students are generally able to work on any subject they choose, sitting wherever they feel most comfortable. Specially designed materials are organized on open shelves for easy access and intrigue. The teacher watches carefully to see how the physical environment is positively or negatively affecting the student and their work. The cultural environment created by the students and staff within the classroom is also prioritized. The children and teacher work very hard to create a peaceful and studious environment during all times of the day, but specifically during work times. As an outsider looking in, a Montessori work time is remarkable. Students work alone on rugs, while some students are at tables working with a friend, while the teacher might be giving a lesson with several students, all while the entire classroom is peaceful and quiet. To uphold this setting, teachers will implement multiple fun and practical systems to support transitions or gain students' attention. In contrast, when I visited traditional classrooms, they felt bland, with minimal seating options and lacking a studious work environment. Having a stimulating environment can make a huge difference in class motivation and productivity when upheld by everyone in the classroom. Time in Montessori classrooms also flows differently than in traditional classrooms. Knowing that children generally have shorter attention spans and less self-control than adults, many traditional teachers adapt their schedules by planning an extra activity time or taking an extra recess. While it seems intuitive to give kids a break when they lose focus, it actually takes kids out of their natural workflow. In Dr. Montessori's research, she found that during the longer work times, yes, there were periods when children became less focused, but this was only for a moment after a work cycle. Within long work times, students go through cycles of work, taking a break at the end of each cycle, but then diving back in. This is the point where most traditional teachers think students need to have a break or to transition from one worksheet to another. In Montessori classrooms, children do not need the extra recess break, if any at all, because they are naturally moving throughout the day. Movement is purposefully integrated into everyday Montessori work life. This helps the child remain active and focus better during their work sessions. Students are fully capable of experiencing deep focus while moving, possessing more enjoyment while working because they are not tethered to their assigned spot. Montessori students also gain considerably more independence as they actively seek out their own materials or support from peers or teachers. The Montessori method's longer uninterrupted work time better supports deeper, more focused, thoughtful work that leads to greater understanding instead of just completion. Likewise, here at BNS, we have recommended hours for working on math and literature, but when we find ourselves in a deeper flow, we are able to continue instead of abruptly stopping. Traditional classrooms lack both integrated movement and movement of hands-on learning. Since children are often learn and show understanding predominantly through gestures, particularly in younger years, it is crucial that classroom learning utilizes the hands. In other words, children can often learn or explain a concept, even an abstract one, by moving objects or manipulatives before they can explain the exact same concept verbally. This is why there are over 100 specially designed materials in a Montessori classroom. The teacher learns the purposes of corresponding lessons for and the perfect time to introduce each material during training. To understand the idea of our hands leading the mind, let's consider a Piagetian number experiment. A facilitator lays out 2 rows of 4 checkers, all evenly spaced. The facilitator then asks the child, which row has more checkers? Usually children ages 4 to 5 will often tell you that both rows have the same amount of checkers. Next, the facilitator spreads one row out farther, again asking, which row has more checkers? Children under the age of 6 often make the conversational error of affirming that the spread out row has more. Yet, when they physically touch the checkers, pairing them together, they understand that the number is still the same. Thus, incorporating movement into curriculum through hands-on manipulation leads to higher cognition of particular tasks as well as their connection to other concepts. Preparing the classroom environment is only one part of the Montessori teacher's role. Their philosophy, practices, and demeanor also impact children's growth. While all teachers must go through training in education, Montessori teachers choose to do additional study and certification in the Montessori pedagogy. Typically, they are genuinely interested in growing every child and improving education as a whole. While many teachers in traditional settings are certainly passionate about educating students and make strides in improving their classrooms and schools, Montessorians as a community have sought out research-based methods to do education differently. They continue to learn, seeking out new understanding of child development, staying aware of current events and advances, and experimenting with new methods. Montessori teachers also tend to stay in the practice longer. Because the model affords much greater levels of autonomy and transformation leadership, they report significantly lower levels of burnout than their counterparts. The passion and commitment of Montessori teachers directly shapes the classroom environment and culture. Though the students play a big part in creating a positive and studious environment, the teacher ultimately sets the expectations and tone as the role model for their students. Children look up to adults, copying and following the examples around them. If a teacher is yelling at their students, commanding them to complete an assignment or listen to directions, the students are less likely to oblige and more likely to talk loudly themselves. Conversely, if a teacher is using a softer, kinder voice, students are more likely to follow instructions and practice that volume themselves. The actions a teacher takes and the emotions they convey will be reflected in their students. Teachers can only build trust by first showing their students how to do the same. In a Montessori classroom, another aspect of the teacher's role is to actively observe the child at work, giving lessons on materials or topics when the child appears ready. The only time a teacher interrupts a child is when the child is being disruptive or unproductive, negatively impacting themselves or others. For instance, during one of my observations in Ms. Fowler's E1 classroom at 8 p.m., the paraprofessional noticed two students chatting together next to two students who were taking a work plan test. She then walked up next to them and gently inquired about what they would be working on next. Through this interaction, she successfully redirected the students toward work and upheld the peaceful environment. Montessori teachers are trained to educate with these three intentions in mind. Discipline. Children are free to make their own choices as well as take responsibility for their actions, learning to respect the boundaries set. Development. Focusing on the whole child's physical, emotional, social, and cognitive progression in a way that naturally stimulates the child's growth. And discovery. Encouraging the child to ask the question and critically think about developing their own answer or conclusion. Put another way, a Montessori teacher is always active. Being an observer is not passive. It includes noticing students' lack of productivity or motivation, a recent spike in social interactions, a student gravitating toward one subject but not another, etc., and implementing the most optimal solution. Through observation, Montessori teachers are able to understand the student on a deeper, more connected level, helping the student to find their own path with the best possible outcomes. For example, one of my visits at Wood Violet Montessori, the Children's House teacher noticed that children who had finished beadwork earlier than others had become restless and loud. She left students who were still beading, retrieved a set of command cards off a shelf, sat down next to a blue tape circle line on the floor. Children immediately began to join her, standing on the circle with their attention directed toward her. As she pulled out a card, they were ready to respond to its commands. For example, jump like a duck or jump like a frog or waddle like a duck. Without speaking, the teacher had successfully redirected the students to an activity beneficial to their learning and the peaceful environment. Montessori teachers guide their classroom, approaching any challenge or service by modeling respectful, tactful, empathetic, and graceful behaviors. Traditional teachers' goals and methods are very different. Their focus is on completing the required curriculum on time rather than verifying understanding. Whereas Montessori teachers think long-term when working with students, taking the whole child and their future into consideration when providing feedback or teaching lessons, traditional teachers are typically focused on imparting the facts or skills prerequisite to the next grade level before students move on at the end of the school year. Thus, their expectations and actions look different from those of Montessori teachers. My observations of first and second grade classrooms at Edison and Houdini Elementary revealed classroom cultures and management styles quite different from those of a Montessori E1 classroom. In the traditional classrooms, the pace felt faster, as if they were all running late or behind. Each lesson or activity was 20 to 30 minutes, followed by a large all-class transition where students had to break their workflow, if they ever got in one, put away supplies, and get out their next assignment, and sometimes even change seats or positions in the process. These transitions took up work time and caused frequent shifts in focus. Furthermore, due to the goal of completing daily or weekly requirements of the set curriculum, teachers are not always able, unfortunately, to take more time explaining concepts or extensively reviewing lessons, causing teachers to ask if students' work is done rather than if they understand the material. This method is based on the notion that all kids should know a particular concept upon completion of their paper assignment, falsely assuming that every child will understand at the same rate. Given that the teacher is the role model for the classroom, when the teacher yells at the class, whether to get the children's attention, correct a child's disruptional behavior, or give an announcement, it is easy for the child to reason to do the same. This is why Montessori teachers almost never raise their voice to get class's attention or correct a child. During my classroom observations, it was rare to see a traditional teacher using tools such as chime, call and response, or turning off the lights to get children's attention. Loud communication was usually the tool of choice, especially during work times. While it can direct attention, it also quickly takes children out of focus and disrupts the environment. This is why, in the Montessori setting, teachers walk quietly over to the needed child, or more often, utilize students for transitions, letting them notify their peers of an upcoming lesson. Involving students in classroom management activities is just one way Montessori teachers integrate problem-solving and leadership skills into the culture. This is a tremendous benefit of the 3-year multi-age classroom configuration of Montessori education. When a student asks for help, Montessori teachers lead students by asking prompting questions to help guide the child in finding their own conclusion, ultimately leading them to be self-sufficient in problem solving. Before even approaching the teacher, though, students know they must ask peers for help first when in need of assistance. Through this practice, teachers are able to complete lessons uninterrupted and help the students most in need. Students are given the opportunity to learn and teach and mentor their peers, as well as learn to ask for help, another life skill. In a traditional classroom setting, a teacher is not with a child for 3 years, learning how they work best and watching them grow. Instead, teachers get new pupils to instruct annually. While a traditional teacher will likely become proficient in teaching the repeated curriculum every year, developing better practices, it is clear that they lack connection with their students. Overall, the Montessori method offers a much deeper and richer experience for children on a variety of fronts, extending past just academically and personally. They learn to move through life using the same approach that shaped them, ultimately gives them an advantage. Through this year, I had the weekly opportunity to apply what I learned in my research and observations in the classes of 3 to 7-year-olds at Ballet Academy for the Arts, where I study ballet. While a dance studio has very different goals and curriculum than a Montessori classroom, I still tried my best to think like a Montessori teacher. As I learned from years prior, the first semester is often a little more challenging integrating students with returning, teaching the core techniques, and understanding the child to meet them where they're at. In ballet, there are not any hands-on materials, so I did my best to verbally explain or physically show movement corrections on myself or on them to encourage understanding. Along with corrections, I tried to also hold space for questions, leading with tact and a calm demeanor. Though this could be hard at times, I quickly discovered that how I set the tone at the beginning of class had an effect on the students' behavior and engagement. As I have only been teaching for about 2 years, I realize I still have many areas of growth to develop. For example, obtaining their attention without yelling over music or screaming is a challenge, as I do not own any chimes or have control over the lights in my studio. Another aspect I continuously remind myself of is the goal of the practice, which is for the child to have fun and learn how to move effectively when they're dancing. It is important to remind myself the focus is about them. As Maria Montessori said, the undisciplined child is still a child who has not yet found the right path. After many weeks of attempting to implement Montessori pedagogy as much as possible into my ballet teaching, it was exciting to finally experience what teaching in a real Montessori E1 classroom was like a few weeks ago at 8 p.m. Miss Fowler graciously allowed me to design and teach a lesson plan in her class. During my observations prior in her classroom, I tried to focus on how she was teaching and what was important to apply when teaching myself. After brainstorming ideas, I decided that my lesson would be on Earth Day. Students would work in small groups to create posters to raise awareness about different types of pollution. To give the students ideas prior to making their own posters, I planned to share examples to get them thinking about what they wanted to make. When I met with Miss Fowler to go over my plan, she pointed out that for this age group, it was important to give them background on the topic. We decided I would read aloud a book before they looked at the example posters. She also reminded me that process is more important than final products, and suggested that the students first create rough drafts. An hour is a short time frame to start a large creative group project, so luckily the kids had time the next day to complete their posters with guidance from Miss Fowler. Although I was initially nervous to teach, it helped to have made connections with the students prior when I volunteered at the library. Overall, I feel it went great and I learned a lot that I will be able to apply in my future. After personal reflection and feedback from Ms. Fowler and Ms. Lidke, areas I still need to grow in are time management, voice projection, and effective and efficient transitions. I look forward to developing my teaching skills and creating my own teacher persona, starting next fall at Colorado College, where I will be studying elementary education. I also look forward to learning more about each Montessori material, their purpose, and their lessons when I complete my Montessori training in the future. As one of my products for this project, I created a short book explaining 21 different Montessori materials, their lessons, and the intent to better understand the materials in the Montessori classroom. This process helped me gain perspective on how much research Dr. Montessori had conducted in order to design each material. There are many concepts in math, geometry, grammar, and spelling that can be hard for children to understand, especially without visually seeing it mapped out. The Montessori materials are intended to help students better understand and engage in a variety of subjects. Designed to attract children's attention through colors, textures, and more, they lead students to want to work and enjoy it. I learned that the materials can be used throughout most grade levels, from sensorial to conceptual to abstract, helping children to better understand abstract concepts. Physically being able to touch letters, practice written motions with their fingers, and physically lay out mathematical formulas, students are able to finer comprehend their work. The entire Montessori philosophy is that children are given the best educational and social environments as possible for their highest progression. There are valuable reasons for multiple types of educational methods because there are multiple types of learners. However, it is equally as important that those options offer all types of learners the opportunity to develop more than their academic skills. Schools should equally, if not more, favor real-world practices and experiential learning in its systems. While there is great value in understanding the basics, there is significant value in being able to learn any topic that may become useful as an adult. The Montessori method, based on scientific child development research, teaches concepts and talks and skills applicable to life in a way that allows all learners to succeed. Valuing the child, environment, and teacher creates a space that encourages deep learning in community, sustains teachers' passions, and grows truly educated lifelong learners who contribute effectively and positively to the world around them. As Montessori correctly asserted, in a society characterized by authoritarianism and competition, the ingredients of school and as traditionally conceived create violence among people. To move toward a more peaceful and effective society, traditional schools must examine the foundations on which they are based: intrinsic motivation, approval, conformity, and comparison, and refocus on the child, a free human being who must teach us and teach society order, calm, and discipline and harmony, the principles every child should grow up on. Thank you. Any questions? Declan?
Earlier on, you said you visited multiple different Montessori schools. Did you ever go visit one over in Nina?
I did visit the Montessori school over in Nina. Met a lot of cool teachers, and the principal. They were all very nice, and you could really tell they have a good practice there, and they continuously want to grow in their Montessori philosophy and method.
Did you talk to Miss Kate?
I did talk to Miss Cage, and she spoke very highly about you and Elias. Haley?
What made you want to become an elementary teacher?
I would say many different factors played into me wanting to become an elementary teacher. I grew up around a lot of teachers with my mom, dad, and grandparents on both sides of the family. So I would definitely say that had a strong role in me finding this career path. Additionally, I did a project in 8th grade about elementary teaching, and I think that kind of lit the spark for me to actually pursue and get more interested in different types of education. Aiden?
If you could make one change to all public schools, what would you change?
If I could make a change to all public schools, I would just say the environment. I don't know about any of you guys, but when I walk into West High School or something, I immediately kind of feel a little scared and intimidated. So just having, I don't know how to change the environment necessarily to make it feel that way, but I feel as though the environment would affect the student behavior and feel more comforting when walking in. Right when you walk in here, it's this big open space where you can see us all working. When you walk into a high school or even an elementary school, it's just hallways with doors and classrooms and you can't see anything. I don't know, that scares me a little bit. So I guess that's the change I would make. Hazel?
What's your biggest takeaway from being only Montessori and tragic things to your entire life as a
My biggest takeaway through only growing up through Montessori and VNS charter schools my whole life would probably be just that we have more confidence in ourselves and in our way of learning, I feel. I feel like my education has pushed me to want to take more challenges or find and seek new research or information or go after my goals really and seek out what I want to do with the rest of my life. And I feel as if I had gone on a different path to a more traditional setting, that I would have been more focused on social aspects, knowing myself, and and then I wouldn't have maybe found the love of teaching that I have today. Aiden?
Was there any notable or like jarring differences between like a traditional or Montessori school that you visited and saw in person and noticed?
The biggest difference I saw between Montessori and traditional classrooms when I visited was probably just the volume. I touched on that a few times in my speech. Like, when I visited the traditional classrooms, they just yell out to their classroom over and over and over. And in a Montessori classroom, it was dead silent basically the whole time, like literature time here. And so that was very different, and maybe that was like the biggest difference, I think, between the two. Because the environments are also very different, with the sense that like Montessori, they have all the shelves, the materials, and everything's integrated to the classrooms. And yes, there are desks in a traditional classroom, but like they often do still feel homey in a way, and comfortable. So yeah, probably the volume of classrooms. Mabel?
So you said you want to be an elementary teacher, but you're also getting Montessori certified. Are you thinking you will teach in a traditional classroom?
Yeah. Yes, I am planning on teaching probably in a traditional classroom first before getting my Montessori license, for multiple reasons. Because I don't have any experience either growing up in a traditional classroom, and I feel it's very important for me to better understand that and what our current system is like, as well as, from what I know, I'm pretty sure most student teaching positions are in traditional classrooms, not as much of like charter schools. And it's wherever you find a job first, right, to help you live stably. So yes, but the goal will hopefully to be receive my Montessori training or master's as soon as possible. Cameron?
I know a big thing, at least what I've seen, is that a lot of Montessori schools, they get like a good amount of funding, but a lot of stuff with like sports, like extracurriculars, is not as like prioritized. Like why that happens. I know here we have like nothing related to that at all. Like if we go to like Nina per se, there's so much stuff. It could just be like a school like count, but I don't know.
That's a good question. I did not research too much about sports integrated into Montessori, and how much, like are you talking like sports teams?
Well, like funding into extracurriculars as a whole.
Okay, funding into extracurriculars.
Like, you see, Montessori is like called extracurriculars, but just like kind of like those main ones that we think about, like how they're outsourced. Like, if you did any work into that.
Yeah, that's a good question. I did not do any specific work into that. However, at APM when I was growing up, they did have tons of extracurriculars such as like kids stage. They had a run club, they have art club, and there are tons of different at least clubs or after school activities that they have that I'm sure I'm not aware of. Talking about funding, there are like public Montessori schools and private schools. So private, and I don't know how the ratio between that. I think there are more private Montessori schools than public. Maybe.
I want an answer. I'm just like,
you know the ratio. But yeah, so right, if you're a private Montessori school, you have what your tuition is. And so assumingly you might have more money to provide more options regarding extracurriculars. And then if you're public, you only get what the district gives you. So that might limit it in certain ways. But yeah, I am not 100% sure. Ms. Fornes?
Talk about the prepared environment of a Montessori classroom. Have you thought about how to apply any of that to Valley School?
If I were
Especially
to
our
apply the prepared environment to to VNS, I would first add so many math materials and have them where we could all access them. For me, as a kid, and still to this day, I struggle most with fractions. And there's a Montessori material where there's physical, like pie piece fractions in this nice little neat box. And if I could just have that during math time, that'd be so nice. So just first, like, getting some of those materials that could just easily help kids learn the formulas faster would be nice. Beyond that, I'm not sure I would change much besides what we are currently planning. So hopefully renovate our school. Dad?
Continuing down that road, do you feel that the skills that you're learning here, or the Montessori skills, when you do end up in the traditional setting, even though you don't know enough about it maybe yet, do you feel that you will be able to take those concepts and apply them and make a better classroom? Or will you need all those tools? Or do you think you'll be able to take the tools that are already set in the classroom and figure out how to make them work more Montessori-like in your traditional setting?
I believe that when I am put in a traditional classroom setting, that I will be able to integrate Montessori into it in the sense of how I teach, right? Because the teacher is that third part of the triangle, and it's a huge aspect. So just based off of that, I think there would be a lot of differences in how the classroom would be run. As I don't know how much I will be able to change the classroom. You technically can buy Montessori materials yourself. They are just extremely expensive. So I will definitely start by implementing the teaching philosophy as much as possible. Ms. Ludke?
I thought it was really cool that you got to go to Colorado and Washington, D.C. for your senior project. Can you share any cool insights or adventures that you had on one of your trips?
Yes, sure. I can share some adventures I had on my conference trips. The Future Teachers Conference in Colorado was at a university, and once I got there, I realized I was the only person out of state. And it was basically a bunch of like Colorado high schools and probably, however many kids signed up. But while it wasn't 100% what I expected, I still felt it was very valuable because the keynote speaker did talk greatly about like what makes a good teacher, and so that was really inspiring. As well as like I'll be living in Colorado for the next 4 years, so I had a really great time, getting to know myself and traveling on my own for the first time, which was I felt like an adult. So yeah, and then the Montessori event conference in Washington, D.C., that was also very inspiring. The conference itself was huge and awesome. And there were all these little classes where I got to, learn whatever I wanted to kind of learn about. And although I wouldn't be an administrator for a really long time, even if I find that's the path I want to go down, I had a lot of fun learning about that. And meeting a bunch of different educators. A woman invited me to sit with her school at lunch when they went out, and so I enjoyed getting to listen to them talk about what they could implement in their own school and what they currently do, as well as travel with my aunt who took me, and we visited the Washington Monument and the big mall there, and that was really cool to see the Capitol and stuff. Hazel?
What would you say the benefits of hands-on/experiential learning?
I would say the benefits of hands-on experiential learning are that it helps you understand better. So I don't know if you guys have been paying too much attention about the rest of the senior presentations, but what I've noticed is that they always say the field trips they took or the live sources they spoke to, that's where they learn the most. and the same applies for me. I feel like that's where I learned the most. Additionally, because I've always like struggled in the research phase, like finding stuff online. For a long time, I struggled with my liking to read, and so I didn't progress in that quite as much as compared to when I like went out, visited classrooms, or talked to my live source in person. And so I felt like that helped me just understand better and get those inside details. Robin?
If you were given a chance, would you work here?
If I were given the chance to work here, I would. I think it would depend on where my, like, how much I needed a job, to put it simply. Well, I wouldn't be opposed to working at VNS. I don't feel it's my path. I do truly feel like Montessori is my path, and additionally, creating education accessible and to all learners and making it better for all learners. And hopefully, like, the dream, right, would be to maybe make innovative schools more accessible around the world. Does that answer your question? Yes. Sawyer? Good question. Advice for future seniors. Okay, normally if you ask me this, my answer would be like, take every opportunity that comes along. However, I'm going to change it to seek out every opportunity. There are always going to be opportunities that come along, and while it is important to like deeply consider and maybe originally, take those opportunities, you don't want to overfill your plate, and sometimes if you have like two great opportunities, right? You have to pick one, whatever. So I would say seek out your opportunities because they're not going to happen every day. You need to find them yourself, and that way you can find the actual one that you think is going to best support you. So a mix of both. I'll go with a mix of both. Maple?
Do you know anything about the popularity of Montessori schools, like across the U.S.? I feel like there are quite a few in our area. Is that the case everywhere?
Yeah, so popularity of Montessori schools, I haven't done a ton of research on this, but I know in Europe it's much more common and much more popular because that's where it originated. So then when it came here, like it took a minute, but there was a rise and, Montessori schools started to be integrated. But then there was kind of a fall, and I think it was due to like some criticism about the Montessori philosophy or pedagogy. I don't 100% know. Right now, as like an estimate, I'd probably say there's like 10 to 20 Montessori schools in each state, roughly, depending how big the state is. I don't know. That might be a lot. Is that a lot? That's a lot. Oh, more? Oh, there's more. Okay, there's probably more then. So clearly I did not research that specifically. But it's obviously not as popular as traditional school because that's what our current system is. But I don't know. Miss Fowler. Okay.
Did you happen to look into like Montessori schools where you're going to college to see if you could maybe do a little volunteering to get a foot in the door? I'm sure that once you get into education classes, you're going to have to do some observing and like coursework, and maybe that would be a good foot in the door, and you probably could student teach in a Montessori school.
I have not yet looked into Montessori schools where I will be going to potentially student teach there. I definitely need to do that. I know of like one or two in the state, but okay, I will definitely look into that because that's a great idea. Max?
What made you want to go to Colorado?
Honestly, just because, I wanted to go to Colorado because of, I honestly just love the state so much. It's so pretty. The air is fresh. You get warm weather and not, 6-month winters. So that was probably the largest factor. Additionally, I also wanted to, move away and have that like adult on my own time experience from like my family, but still be supported by family. So I have like aunts and uncles out there, like 4 hours away or whatever. So those are the biggest factors that played into it, and me choosing. And the school I'm going to is set up on a block plan, so kind of like our 6-week projects without everything else. So like 3 weeks of school and a final, 3 weeks of school and a final. So I felt that would work better for me as well. Any other questions? Wait, okay. I need acknowledgments. Okay, so thank you guys. Thank you specifically to all my life sources, but specifically Ms. Fowler. Thank you for supporting me and letting me teach in your classroom. It was so nice. Thank you to my advisor, Ms. Licky, for always supporting me through my entire BNS career, always pushing me to be my best and strengthen my skills, as well as all the advisors. Thank you to my aunt for chaperoning me on my trip. And thank you to my parents for always supporting me in following my goals and letting me find my own path. Now, thank you. Now I'm done.